Peak human.
Les humains à leur meilleur.
C'est tu apogeo.
Peak 人間
Peak behavior.
You may be wondering what happened to that plant-based couple I talked to back in episode 1. Well, they haven't withered away from their poor diet just yet. Just joking, it isn't that bad, and they seem to be pretty savvy with not eating a lot of the plant-based trash. You also notice they started eating sardines in this episode, so they should be getting a great boost of nutrition there to keep their bodies intact. It took us a while to find a time to record again, but we finally got a chance to finish up the conversation and get into the environmental aspects as well. I'll have some more guests talking about this side of things very soon. So this is the time when on other shows you'd be hearing annoying ads for products you don't care about. Luckily, I've chosen to not try to make any money off this podcast, even though it's taken hundreds of hours of work. If you're listening, you probably really care about this topic or are interested in learning more. If you're getting any value from this podcast, please show your support by contributing to the film. It's called Food Lies and is crowdfunding now on Indiegogo.com. Here's the episode. So, we're back here. You guys good?
Hey,
we're back.
We back. We back.
We just listened to the last 10 seconds. So we left off saying that it might be harder, but you can supplement correctly, and that you guys know that soy and corn are bad.
Yes.
And I guess to continue, I'd say not every vegan knows that. I think they don't know that at all. They're eating all these weird products that are full of soy and, weird stuff, and corn, and these government subsidized products that aren't great for us. So what about that?
I mean, I agree. I think there are definitely people who maybe not vegan, but are vegetarian and then automatically just eat more tofu and, carbohydrates. And I don't think that that's the way to go. But I do think that as we generally, as more is learned, people are kind of veering away from soy milk. I would definitely say that, you have more options now. Almond milk, coconut milk, even now macadamia milk, which sounds delicious. I definitely think people are more aware that soy is something that you should definitely have in limited quantities. And I think people are learning that corn also is not the healthiest for you, or definitely is.
Yeah. What about all these weird processed foods though? I guess, like a soy burger. You guys showed me this, what is it, Impossible Burger? It has 30 ingredients. Why would that be good?
First off, it's delicious and it's non-soy.
Okay,
I don't know how they make it. It's crazy.
It's just a fake stuff put together. Why would that be healthier than just eating meat?
Well, I haven't seen the ingredients. I would have to go through them.
Yeah.
But I agree with that. If that's what it is, it's not the healthiest thing. I think it's education as well, because I think it's when you first stop eating meat, it's really easy to fill that void with soy protein, gardein stuff, which is something a lot of vegan places use, which is basically a soy filler. Mm-hmm. That's a meat alternative. And I think, not to say that if you looked in our fridge right now, there aren't certain versions of that. However, we do our best to keep it very limited. Mm-hmm. And what is in Impossible Burger?
Listen.
Well, it's not good.
So we've been trying to go away from soy, so we're trying not to eat soy, but we have no idea what's in.
Yeah.
It's Beyond Meat Burger and an Impossible Burger. You have to try them. They're pretty lifelike. They sizzle like meat. It's crazy.
Some of it's based on coconut oil, actually. So it does have saturated fat. And
it does have saturated fat.
How you get that flavor is with coconut oil. But so that's probably the one good thing that's in it. I think coconut oil is good for you. But there's just a bunch of other stuff. Even if you're talking about environmental, now you're spending tons of money, energy, cooling. There's so much more processing. Even forget about health. You're using so much more energy. I'd say it'd be worse than just eating an animal, just on an environmental standpoint. Do you know what I mean? To run a factory, to make this, to even just to refrigerate all this stuff while you're making it.
To be 100%, we have no idea what's in them yet. And this is our bad, but we just know there's non-soy, so we kind of, and it tastes amazing. But yeah, you're right. We have no idea what the energy...
It's not something we eat every day, and we are not to the point yet. We're still doing due diligence with respect to the health effects of vegetarian and vegan diet and pescatarian, and how to apply that to our lives. I can't speak for both of us, but I would venture to guess that Marie Faye would say the same thing, in that we're not well versed with what it takes to get it to your kitchen table.
Yeah, well, also, I don't expect you guys to be perfect or well-versed in this. This is, yeah. So I'm not trying to, try to catch you guys. I'm just trying to have the discussion so that other people can hear it. So,
I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I care about the environment, and it's definitely worth a look. I mean, I think it goes both ways because, I mean, for every argument for storing refrigerated processed, I would never argue in favor of processed foods.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's a counter argument for every argument with respect to using energy to make meat.
Yeah, well, if you do meat the correct way, you shouldn't use much energy, right? They should just be out on the fields, using the sunlight, using the grass, using the rain. And then a slaughter facility, I mean, it's, guys with saws and, it's not a ton of, there is some refrigeration needed and some trucking, but all food needs some of that. So there shouldn't be that much if you're eating whole foods. Processing will always have more energy use.
Well, I think that's an interesting topic to go into is just like where, what about the whole processed meat industry or meat industry, right? Livestock. Ideally, you just mentioned, it'd be great if they're grazing. But I mean, in reality, the cow place on the 5 is nowhere near what you're talking about of cows.
Like Harris
grazing.
Ranch or whatever it's called.
Yes, it is. I mean,
We're talking about
does not.
California, like mid-California, when you drive up north,
when you drive up, everyone who lives in California knows this. If they've done this drive, you drive past this place. It's just this huge cattle.
It's like mud. Yeah, it's just.
It's they're crammed in there, and there's I don't even know how many cows are there, and it just smells like death.
No one can back that up. I'm not here to back that up, but I'm here to talk about a way to do it sustainably, and also. All cows spend 2/3 of their life on pasture, no matter where, if they go to a finishing facility, a feedlot, or if they continue on the grass to be grass finished, they still spent the first 2/3 of their life on pasture. So not a lot of people know that, and no one talks about it. Everyone just talks about the feedlot part.
But is that something legally that's supposed to take place? Is that something that you've heard from visiting facilities? Is that something?
That's just how it go. That's just how it has to be. It's the cow. The calf is with the mother on pasture. That's just how it works. And then they get old enough to go to the feedlot, the finishing.
But I
facility.
think that's specific for cows, and there's much different. I don't know if that's the same for pigs. I don't think that's. I definitely don't.
Well, pigs aren't ruminants. We should only talk about ruminants, and ruminants like sheep. So sheep, like bison, those are ruminants. Cows.
We don't have
pigs are a different story.
I guess mainly our talk is more on like the U.S. based diet, where it's really cows, chickens, pigs.
Yeah, and okay, but then sheep. I believe sheep is almost always grass fed the whole way through.
I would agree with that.
So is bison. I went to the farmer's market and got a great piece of bison meat, and these farmers drove it down themselves. For one, I guess I'd say it's not that hard to get good grass fed beef of all types, and pigs and chickens, if you just go to the farmer's market.
I mean, I would agree with that. And I agree. Like, I've been, like, in England, I think they eat a lot more sheep than we do here in the U.S. And it's actually really nice just to, like, drive through and, like, see them. I mean, it seems like they've got lots of land. They're allowed to kind of graze freely. Bison as well. And I have no problem with that. I think it's just more modern livestock practices in terms of if you're not a conscientious buyer of your meat.
Yeah.
And you're buying bologna from the supermarket, which I think is most of America is buying
processed meat.
Meat.
Okay, processed meat. There's not that much wrong with processed meat. It's a bunch of meat parts pressed together. It's not ideal, but there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, when we were at the pool, you guys brought up the meat we have is horrible. You're like, this meat is full of hormones, this antibiotic, this and that. I mean, there's really not that much in it. I looked some stuff up. We've had laws for years that don't allow antibiotics to be used for certain things, or that the hormones are in very small levels and it's just like in their ear. It's like a tiny implant in their ear. It's not getting to the meat. I feel like vegans, it sounds like your sentiment at the pool when we originally talked was that we have this meat in America that's just like tainted. It's just like this stuff. It's like full of chemicals and it has like antibiotics running through it and there's estrogen everywhere. That's not the case at all.
I think there's definitely hormones in, well, let's just talk about the different things. There's definitely hormones, right? The predominant hormone is estrogen, and all cows get that implant, you're right. And we have so many different sources of it, including milk, right? Milk is a more concentrated form of not necessarily the beef itself, but milk. But again, I know soy also is a high level of estrogen.
Well, here I have this chart open. The amount of this is government data. This is not like from one side or the other. This is per 8-ounce serving of common foods. We have beef at 2 nanograms. We have milk at 15 nanograms. Butter, 141 nanograms. Eggs, 252. Then we go to peanuts, 45,000. White bread, 136,000. Pinto beans, 408,000. Tofu, 51 million. Soy flour, 342 million nanograms.
I mean, I agree. Soy has more. Tofu has more. Soy stuff has more estrogen.
But look at the levels. But even just beans or peanuts.
The average American in the U.S., in the Midwest, they're not eating soy products. They're not eating tofu.
But we're just talking about this. No, milk is 15.
How much white bread are they consuming?
No, but
on the daily basis? I'm just saying in the lifespan, no one eats soy that it lives in non.
I know. Okay, forget about soy.
Places.
But just white bread is 136,000 nanograms. But milk is 15 nanograms. You can't talk about, then beef is 2 nanograms. Hormones are not running through the beef. It's not even getting to the beef. 2 nanograms. Right now, it's an adult man has to
compare how much. Yeah, okay, well, let's do that. Like, what in a man in the Midwest, how much of that would he consume over the course of 50 years versus how much soy he would consume?
Okay, no, you gotta forget soy, but we're talking about the alternative to meat would be, say, pinto beans or bread or anything else that has 100,000 times the amount. So why you can't, like, it would take them 40 years to get to one piece of bread.
But I'm saying, I mean, I don't know, is that the case? I mean, I guess I'm saying, why is it that, and this is something that's been shown, it's like, people are getting, I don't know where it's coming from. Is it in the water? Is it something? But it's shown that, like, people are hitting puberty earlier. Young girls are hitting puberty earlier.
Yeah,
and they say that's
these other products.
Of hormones. Most people do not eat soy.
There's soy in a lot of things. There's soybean oil and tons of things. It's hidden. It's not like they're eating pure soy products. It's in tons of stuff. And like I said, in white bread, it's not just soy. Soy has nothing to do with white bread. But white bread has 136,000 nanograms.
But those are all
and
bad
milk
things,
has 15
right?
nanograms.
So we're just saying all those things are things you should avoid. And also, I would say that the things that are the most common in most Americans' diet are white bread and meat and milk.
Yeah, but one's 130,000 times more than the other. I don't understand. You can't, like, why is that even a factor? Beans are 408,000 nanograms.
But you're talking about like
so
a tiny
you'd have
amount.
to eat beans compared to 2 nanograms in beef. You'd have to eat beans for 200,000 times more just to equal one piece of meat. So you can't say that the meat is the problem.
There's something happening. I don't know.
I think there's like propaganda. Like
but there is something to be said that there is definitely something
but it's not the meat.
I'm saying it's a combination of everything in the American diet and what we're exposed to now. It could be in the water. It could be some. I don't know what it is. But people have more levels of estrogen, and this is something that I've heard.
Yeah.
Than our generations.
Definitely, because it's a
people
processed foods.
Young girls are hitting.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're eating all this processed foods. They has vegetable oils. It has soy oils. It has all this other weird flours and stuff we're not supposed to be eating. Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. There's problems. I 100% agree. And I'm just saying all this stuff.
I'm not saying it's all meat, but I'm saying that I think whatever we're eating now, a combination of multiple things, is all contributing to this issue.
Yeah. So let's just not blame it on me. That's all. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, estrogen aside, I think there's other risks of eating meat based on the way that we manufacture and treat and kill animals. And I think that there's the way that we pack animals and the way that we treat them could be more susceptible to different types of illness, or if one animal grazing on a pasture that would be on its own and sick and dying is now in some type of feedlot or in some type of situation where there's a massive amount of creatures in a smaller space, that's going to spread, and all those animals need to be treated so we can eat them.
Yeah, that is a problem. That's why we have to give antibiotics to cows when we're feeding them in a feedlot, but you don't need it when you're raising them correctly on pasture. You're kind of just making the point that we should raise them naturally.
Yeah,
but
I think we can agree that the common farming practice now, I think, is not.
Okay, so we should have two discussions. First, I'll say, even the way we're doing it right now is not that bad. And I think it's just fine if you can't afford grass-fed meat to buy meat from the grocery store. It's not toxic. It doesn't have like crazy stuff running through it. No one will, the FDA would not allow us to buy it. It is perfectly fine and better for you than trying to get protein from beans and rice, where you're just getting a bunch of other carbs and sugars in it instead, and it's not a full, complete protein.
I think we would actually agree with that. I mean, we would never argue that white bread, beans, or rice are a fair alternative.
So then okay, this is what we didn't finish talking about with like ferment stuff at the end of nutrient density. Where does he suggest getting protein from? Because that we talked about nutrients, and I say that they're not as bioavailable in plants. So we can agree that plants are great, but where are you getting your protein from?
Playing off of ferment, I think one of the first things that he says is that he talks about the protein myth, because we may not need as much protein that has been driven to us through education, through FDA-sponsored government food pyramids and all this type of stuff. So it starts, and not just with what protein is in what food, but as far as the normal human and what protein they need to be able to function and exercise and work out and do whatever they need to do. I think that that number is less than we think, and I think there's more protein if you just follow a healthy regimen of fresh food that is available.
The vegan side, they always go to this. Like their whole argument, part of their whole shtick is that we don't need as much protein as you think, and they try to just go against the grain, like this is all a lie, we actually need a little bit of protein, just because that fits with their whole thing, is because the foods that they're pushing don't have a lot of protein. So then they jump on the bandwagon of, oh yeah, we don't need that much protein anyway.
But who's to say what is the recommended?
With all due respect, when you look, I mean, I can speak on behalf of experience as far as labeling and food labeling, whether it's changed more recently than not or whatever, it's like everybody is calling out protein on vegan.
I've noticed that. That's a good thing. Well,
vegetarian food.
They changed it
because they just want you to know that there's some in there. It's not like it's some swept under the rug thing where it's pretending like nobody needs protein. I think it's recognized.
No, I've watched these vegan lectures. They talk. I've seen all these Esselstyn and all these guys that they talk about. Oh, we don't need as much protein. There was a debate I watched. T. Colin Campbell against Lauren Cordain, the old paleo guy. I know there is a huge movement to try to say we don't need as much protein. But I just don't agree with that.
Don't you think protein is also too? I mean, it depends. Like every body is different, right? And there are vegan bodybuilders who are. I mean, if you look, like they are fit, they're ripped. They are obviously getting protein because that's what they need to build their muscles. So I just think that when you do anything responsibly, they're doing it the right way. Yes, there are certain amino acids that are not as bioavailable. There are not certain vitamins that you need to supplement iron through supplements, but you can do it. You can do it. And again, I'm just saying that I think as long as you do your research, there are many paths that can get you to fitness. And I think if you're going the vegan route, you have to be a little bit more conscientious about where you do get your sources that are missing, but you can still do it.
Yeah, but it's very hard. It's way harder to the point where if you're just trying to do to the masses, just like do this, give recommendations to them, 99% of the people aren't going to be that vegan bodybuilder that studies this and knows exactly what he's doing and measuring things out and doing it correctly. So there's a lot more failures. And we just know, no matter what you say, that America as a whole has failed, right? With their health. 52% of people have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. Yes. You could say all this stuff about these stats. So we know that they've failed somehow as a country. So
what I will say is I think it's easier for the average person to do probably a ketogenic diet and have that work for them successfully in the long run than it probably is to do a vegan diet.
I'm not advocating a ketogenic diet. And actually, it is pretty hard to do a true ketogenic diet because you have to eat a lot of fat. I've seen studies that show that, yes, not everyone needs a ton of protein. And it's kind of like a U-shaped curve of where you can get up to like 22% protein and then down to 10% protein. And those are you can be on either end, but when you're in the middle, it's the least optimum. So yes, you can do okay with maybe around 10% protein.
Wait, right? What do you mean? So the middle is the least optimal?
Yes. So if you're eating,
what do you mean? Well, so too little is good, but a lot is good?
Yes. Well, a lot, 22% is not that much. There's, I should have.
20% of your overall diet.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so I eat more. I eat around 22. I think protein is fine. I've been listening to like a lot of interesting stuff lately that it's hard to hit your upper limit of protein. I mean, especially these carnivores are proving that. They're eating only meat. even though the meat's not all protein, it's partly fat. They're doing great. They're getting healthier.
I wouldn't argue that more protein is bad. I would just say we don't need as much as we might think. Like, I don't think there's a limit necessarily.
You could say that you don't need as much, but I think we should talk more about nutrient density is what I always talk about. And we talked about last episode.
Yes.
So this kind of leads to this whole unifying theory of nutrition. I completely agree. Everybody's different. And I'm not trying to make a prescription that will fit everyone, right? So what I want to try to do is how can we get a framework that encompasses everything? Right. And I think it revolves around nutrient density. So here's kind of things we've been dancing around. So to me, food is 4 things, right? It's the macros, it's fat, carbohydrate, and protein, and then it's micronutrients. We'll just group everything into micronutrients, right? So fat and carbohydrates are just fuel sources. Think of those, all they are is fuel sources.
Right.
You're not getting that much nutrition from them. And then the protein and micronutrients, those are your essentials. These are the building blocks of your body. This is what you need. So you need to focus on these and then limit your fuel source. It's very simple. That is kind of just the unifying theory, right?
Yeah, we would agree with that.
So you choose a fuel source, and I'd say it's better to choose one or the other. If you're mixing them, some people can do okay mixing them, but a lot of Americans, they eat 40% carb, 40% fat, 20% protein. That's just that just seems to be a recipe for eventual obesity. So say the paleo community chooses fat. So they're eating a heavier fat diet and lower carb. They're doing well. Vegan side will choose carbs as their fuel source and eat very little fat, and they're doing well. So you just need to focus on protein and micronutrients and lower your energy source to your goals, your fuel source, right? That's all you should think about. And that's why I choose the foods I did. I guess we did talk about this last time, but I was saying if you're focusing on protein and micronutrients, the best source of those are like leafy green vegetables, organ meats, stuff like that. Like, so if you're eating beans and rice, you're not getting that nutrient density. You're getting extra fuel source in there, right? You're getting a bunch of extra fuel source. And maybe these vegan bodybuilders are doing okay because they're eating tons of beans and plant source protein, and they're getting extra fuel source, but they're burning it off because they're doing all these weights and exercises.
Yeah, I think we'd agree with that.
I think that brings together both sides.
Yeah, I think that definitely brings together both sides because we focus more on like that nutrient density in like plant or like vegetables and like raw leafy greens. Like we fill our diet with that.
That's good. Just where are you going to get I just think you have a less seafood. Good quality. Yes. So if you eat the seafood,
sardines,
if you're eating those oysters,
sardines.
Good. If you're eating those oysters,
and we love oysters.
That's awesome. See, that's nutrient dense, but it's lean. So if you're going on the more low fat side, then you're doing okay because you're getting lean sources of good protein from say like mussels or oysters. And then have a bunch of leafy greens and stuff like that. Yeah. That's where we can agree on.
Let me ask you about this.
Okay.
Because we're talking about sustainable practices. So we don't eat farmed fish.
Okay. I don't either. I try not. I don't think that.
So are we kind of in agreement that that's, I mean, this is what when we're talking about antibiotics in cattle, right?
Yeah.
We've heard there's lots of antibiotics used in kind of common in farming fishing practices. So, and there's a mercury, right? Issue too. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of what's the best seafood to eat?
Well, I know there's a documentary that I didn't even watch. It looked gross about farmed fish. And they just throw like buckets of like gross stuff and antibiotics and they're all like in this tiny little area. It looks bad. So yes, I wouldn't eat farmed fish if possible. But that also may only be in like Chile or there was like some certain areas where they do it, like these sort of third world places that do it poorly. But probably the stuff we can get in America is probably okay. And I think they do tests on it. And mercury, that's only with the bigger fish. When you're eating sardines, those are small fish. You're not getting mercury from sardines. So sardines are perfect. Also, you're eating the whole fish. Sardines are like nose to tail. Our ancestors ate the whole animal. So I think it's great to eat the sardines. You're getting all of that. You're getting like little bones and stuff even when you eat it. So that's great. And you're not getting mercury. The mercury's from like tuna and stuff, like those big fish that eat all the other fish. Yeah. So I mean, just don't eat tuna that much. We didn't really finish the sustainable farming type of thing. So to switch over to meat, the last thing I'll say is it's not that bad if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, it's not that bad. So don't be scared of it. And then if you can afford it, it's better. It's also better to vote with your wallet by creating a demand for sustainably raised beef, right? So that's a good reason to buy it. Is it's actually shifting. People are figuring out, big companies are figuring out that it's better to, people want this meat that's grass finished. That's another good reason to buy it.
When you look at grass-fed beef versus kind of what normal cattle are fed, which is like corn and soy, right? The things
Well, there's actually not that much corn and soy. There's actually, you can get into that I've talked to some people, like what they actually feed.
Yeah, what do they actually feed most cows in?
Well, it's a mix. Some of it is leftover food, non-edible food waste. 45% of grain goes to chickens, actually. So you know all these figures about, how much grain we eat? 45% actually goes to chickens. 26 goes to pigs, so that's 71%. So only about 20% goes to cows and other ruminants. So cows, they'll have like some like kind of hay mixture or like grasses. They're not on the field, but they're getting bushels of grasses that they feed them. Some grain and then some food waste.
Do you think cows are fed corn?
I'm sure there are.
Anything that is alarming to you at all?
I don't think it's that much of their diet, but I'm sure there's lots of farms that feed them all kinds of grains or corn or anything that they can. I don't know that much about every single farm. I just know like the general statistics or like in general, this is what they're fed. And it's not that bad. Well, it's like we feed humans. People get all upset about feeding cows corn. Well, we're feeding humans corn. And
I know. But
we're fattening them up.
arguing that it's good.
Okay. We're not, yeah.
So
we're saying
but that's
that
because we started off the conversation talking about, you know what I mean, corn being a supplement and finding its way into a lot of people's diet, like soybeans and all this stuff, and processed corn and corn syrup and all the things that you can make out of corn.
Yeah.
But if the animals are eating it and you're eating the animals, you're...
Not exactly, no. I mean, the animals turn it into protein, right? They have these stomachs, they're rumen. It's this whole process that they eat grass. It's not like we're eating grass. They're eating the grass, and then there's microbes and bacteria in their stomachs that turn that into some sort of protein, I believe, that they use in their body. We're just eating protein. We're eating animal muscle. Like, it's not like we're eating corn.
So you don't think what the animal eats makes its way into your body?
Not really.
So the whole, like, you are what you eat.
No, that's not exactly true. No, basically what we eat is broken down by our own microbiome and turned into different lipids and glucose and this and that. It's not like we are exactly what we eat. I forget, there's a good quote. We are what our body does with what we eat. Everything just gets broken down into tiny things that affect our body in different ways and give us either nutrients, or it gives us sugar spikes, or it affects us in different ways. Everything we eat just affects us in a different way and gives us either energy or protein or micronutrients, different things that will either build our body or make us store fat.
So when you're eating the liver of an animal, you don't think that what they've eaten is just...
No. So, okay,
I don't think it matters what they've been eating?
Okay, so a liver doesn't filter toxins. It's not like this liver just filters toxins and accumulates it and then we eat the liver. A liver processes toxins and breaks them down in a way. So yes, I made sure that...
Do you think some toxins or some like weird...
No, we would not eat liver if it was just a bunch of toxic buildup that the animal ate. It's a completely different thing. It breaks them down and does a chemical process to them. So us eating liver is not us eating toxins now.
Can I read to you?
I'd love to hear this
article that I just pulled up on my phone. Obviously, this is a slide, but it's like 6 surprising things that we are feeding cows today. 1, antibiotics. I don't think that's that surprising, but close to 50 million pounds of antibiotics each year. Okay. Fish heads. This might not be bad. Fish and seafood byproducts like crab, shrimp, and fish guts. Not too bad. Chicken feces.
Well, I mean,
Cattle
accidentally...
farmers are increasingly feeding their livestock chicken poop.
Well, they probably eat that
which
anyway.
Which may contain feathers, bacteria, antibiotics, and heavy metals, but may potentially promote the spread of disease like mad cow.
This is such BS. But like cows roaming, animals for millions of years have eaten other animals' feces, and just they're all co-evolved. That's probably better for them.
Okay. Sawdust. It's catching on due to its inexpensive nature, and since it's technically plant material, after being soaked in nitric acid, it is then digestible. So cows are now eating it.
No.
Candy.
Well, I've heard about the Skittles. Yeah, they try to fatten them up on candy because it's just a glucose source.
The practice of feeding candy began when corn prices skyrocketed. So instead of feeding them corn...
Well, I think this is a little overblown. It probably happened, but I don't think that's what all they do. Okay, for one thing, these farmers, it's in their best interest to not make their cows sick. It's in their best interest to have them be healthy so they can actually sell them and have like a good product.
True.
So
True.
I don't think,
agree with that.
yeah. So I don't think
The caveat that it's in their best interest to grow them and keep them alive until they're at a growth where they can be slaughtered. That doesn't necessarily mean they're
Healthy,
invested in the long-term health or life capacity of any animal. And though the growth, I mean, flipping back, like, you know, to the whole chicken story and stuff like that, I mean, these animals are getting pumped full of things that are intentionally making them grow. It's business, you know what I mean? I mean, yeah, there's plenty of vegan, vegetarian, against the system type of marketing and other tactics that are maybe overblown with respect to certain things, but you have to acknowledge that on the other side, there's the same thing. And so when you say the FDA does this, or this is how it's supposed to be, or these are the stats that I've gotten from the government website, I take all that with a grain of salt. And so there's got to be a balance with respect to propaganda on the vegan and vegetarian side, but there also has to be a recognition for the fact that both teams are in a business. And a business, if you are providing meat and that is your business, I'm not saying all, but there's going to be a decent chunk of people participating in that business that are going to do what they can to get money for the least amount of work.
Well, the government's more in the business of selling corn, wheat, and soy than animals. And they have been trying to push that stuff for a while. I understand what you mean. And I don't think there's that big of a lobby on the other side, on the meat side, that's really trying to spread anything.
Well, I think it's because it hasn't been needed.
Well, because people
have been
want
eating
it.
so much meat for
yes,
so long.
because it's natural and people...
Yeah, but we're obese.
Well, I don't think it's the meat's fault. I can tell you that. Eating both meat with refined grains and sugars, that's the problem. You can't say it's the meat.
I'm not saying it's just the meat.
Yeah. So, okay, if we go back to kind of the unifying theory, why different people can do well on either side of the spectrum. So that's why people say, oh, well, what about Simone in Bolivia? Like these people, they eat 80% carbs and 10% protein, 10% fat. Why are they doing so well? Or why are vegans doing so well? Why can, go on the potato diet and only eat potatoes and lose weight? Right? Have you heard stuff like that? Or there's partly is because you have to you just pick a side, right? You're not eating the combination of it. And you're also you're not eating processed foods. So there's a lot of things going. So there's two different states. There's two different metabolic states the body can be in. It was probably cyclical. If you think about human evolution, there's all different climate types in history. There was like ice ages. There's, you know what I mean? There's throughout history, throughout millions of years as humans evolved, there's totally different weather types around the world, just different latitudes and longitudes. You'd have different weather climates. Even by the season, you'd have different types of food sources. Humans evolved probably to eat two different ways. You could eat high fat, low carb at some times, or low carb, high fat at some times. Maybe in the winter, we would eat more high fat. We'd get these animals that were fattened up and we'd eat them. In the summer, they were more lean, or in the summer, we'd have more berries. There'd be more fruits and honey in the summer and grains, and maybe we didn't kill an animal. So maybe it was even cyclical by the week. Like what if we got a couple good hunts one week and we're eating awesome. We were eating tons of meat, protein, fat. And then some week we didn't get it. So we're like, now we got to eat potatoes and some berries. So then we did fine on that. And so some people live their whole lives. Like in Africa, the Hadza, there's tons of different examples of these tribes that just based on their environment, they survive and they don't have heart disease. They're not obese. They don't have Alzheimer's. They don't have cancer, but they're still eating high carb. That's why I'm saying I'm not like no one can eat carbs. I'm just saying there's different metabolic states. And I always even try to call it the failed environment metabolic state. That's purposely to put a negative spin on it. But like when your environment fails you because there's an ice age, because you don't get a hunt, because you live in Africa on the equator and you can't get certain animals, then you can eat high carbs and low fat and do okay. Or you can eat in the Inuit, or maybe the opposite. They're eating high fat most of the time. So some people think you should eat cyclically, or you know what I mean? Like change your diet by the season or even by the week. And I think that's pretty interesting.
I think we agree with that.
Well, kind of fits in what you were saying. You guys do one version of that.
I think when I think there's no, I agree. I feel like the way people have historically done it, they didn't have, right? I mean, there's just no contest. Like, we have such a higher rate of cancer and disease, like diabetes, all these diseases we just didn't have that were as prevalent. They're so prevalent now, and they weren't back in the day. So there is a definite, and
that's
the
like
one thing
Weston A.
I
Price
think
stuff we talked about last time.
Nutrition is just, I mean, there's just so much more processed.
Nutrition and Physical Degeneration.
Yes.
That's the name of his book. And remember, I said it's because they immediately get sick and fat and type 2 diabetes when they introduce sugars, refined grains, and vegetable oils. And the nutrient density, that's what they focused on. And that's when they do well. And also, processing is not necessarily the problem. Some people are like, oh, there's preservatives in it. Oh, no, it's a preservatives. I don't know. It's probably not great, but I don't think that's a problem. The problem is you're stuffing extra refined grains and sugar and corn syrup in it. That's the problem. That's when you're getting extra energy. You're getting extra fuel source without getting the nutrients. That's also the protein leverage hypothesis. Your body eats until you get enough protein, right? And if you're eating this stuff these foods that are stuffed with extra calories and extra refined grains and sugars, you're not getting full. You're just getting a bunch of extra energy, and you keep eating until you get enough protein, which is hard to do when you're eating that trash.
Yeah, I think I mean processed, like fast food, like snack food, stuff that's just been like introduced as part of like our, like the quick and convenient
hyperpalatable
diet.
Foods. That's another big thing that I really agree with. Is we engineer foods that taste so good that it goes against your wiring. You're like, I want to keep eating this.
Yes.
Because it's that perfect combination of fat and sugar and salt. And that's bad. Chips are, that's like the worst.
I mean, anything with sugar is absolutely addicting. Like, people get addicted to sugar. So yeah, I mean, I think we're in agreement. I think that a lot of the stuff that when you get into the modern world and you have all this like stuff that's now been coming out, I think that's why we have a lot of these diseases. I think we're in agreement on that.
Okay.
But looking into the ideal diet and how do we sustainably create the demand for food, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us about, I mean, when you talk about rotational cropping, why don't
rotational grade, yeah.
Is that, from what you've learned, I know you've been doing a ton of research, who's leading the efforts in that? Is it becoming more popular? What are the pros and cons in terms, or like what are the obstacles to us moving towards something that's more sustainable?
Well, people say, the biggest one might be doing it on a large scale. So that is a big problem. Rotational grazing is when you, instead of having a big plot of land, like a big square of a field and just let the cows roam, you get them fenced in and you get them to graze one small sliver of that land at a time. And then they stimulate the grass by eating it, and they fertilize the ground with their feces, and then they move on. And then you can even have chickens come along behind it. Now those chickens are moving around, they're eating worms, they're like pushing around the cow pies and like fertilizing the soil and dropping their own fertilizer. And then you move them, say, in a circle around for a couple months, say. And by the time you get back to that first patch of grass that they were grazing on, now that's highly growing and back. So that would be a way to just grow the animals on the land in a perfect cycle. But there's also mixed farming, and there's no-till farming that I talked about a couple times about Gabe Brown, who has a 5,000 acre farm in North Dakota, giant farm that does this all with a mixture of plants and animals. And yes, in different parts of the land, you grow plants and you keep rotating even those around. So if you can do that, so instead of growing all this grain and corn and soy to then feed to other animals or to humans, so if there's a less demand for that to go to animals and for humans, then we could use all that land to do these mixed farms on. So what if you had millions of acres of land that wasn't being depleted of all its nitrogen, and the soil is degrading and getting ruined, and we could use that land to do this rotational grazing or mixed farming methods that actually puts carbon back into the soil. This process has scientifically been studied to sequester carbon and build soil health and grow nutritious food and not use antibiotics and not use fossil fuel fertilizers. It's so perfect. If you think about how it could work, all the bad stuff is taken out. No animals in a cage. We're not using anything unnatural. All we're using is sunlight and rainwater. And all we would need to do is change the government subsidy system. Part of the problem is these farmers can't even get loans to do something like this because they can't get crop insurance because they're not doing the subsidized system so they can't even start this process. In the ideal world, I'd say we use all that land and do this. And we could have smaller farms. It could be more like the old days, family-run farms, we could have more jobs. This could be a way where people could have great jobs and actually be working and actually be producing something of value and still be making money. It is profitable. And we could have healthier foods.
I mean, that would be amazing. I think if we could move to something like that, I feel like even it would make for me meat more appealing, honestly. It really would. If you had something where people were roaming, these animals could roam free and
there would be no antibiotic. Everything would be addressed.
Yeah, you wouldn't need antibiotics because they weren't all crammed in all together. So
yeah,
I think
it wouldn't be cruel, and you could do it more. Some of the cruelty happens when it's being mass produced. If you could let a cow have a perfect life and then all of a sudden get hit with a bolt gun and be instantly killed in a very nice environment that wasn't crammed in, they weren't stressed out, you know what I mean? Like, it's got to die sometime. A lot of animals, they get mauled in the forest, right? That's not good for them. But if they could die in an instant, part of it, the problem is, though, if they're crammed in this weird situation and they know they're going to die, stuff like that, that's bad.
Yeah, exactly.
I've talked to farmers at the farmers market lately. There's different ways to do it where it's not like that, right? You could just put them in a nice environment. It's just more of that small batch, right? Everything's better in a small batch.
It's true. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, small batch vodka, small batch beer, all that stuff. So do it with cows and they're not going to be stressed out. So that's the ideal world. That's the sapient movement. So I started the website. I'm trying to just get people to support it. I've been talking to people on the podcast like Sean Baker or like Lear Keith, the vegetarian myth. That episode's going to come out later. It's just people are supposedly going to support it and we're all just going to support it together. Sapientmovement.com. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I just am collecting emails and then when we have ideas, we'll send them out and we'll have to figure it out. We're going to do it together.
I think if there's more of, and I do think that modern agriculture / farmers are listening to what people are asking for, right? Like the reason we do so many things is because they'll do whatever the consumer wants, right? Mm-hmm. And if there's a trend towards a demand for a certain type of thing, I think that I don't know. It's hard. They're obviously profits are number one, but I do think that they want people to buy their stuff. So I think the more support you get, the better.
I think we're headed that direction. Maybe we can do some just rapid fire stuff at the end here. I think you guys asked me about fiber once. So fiber, that's something that the vegan side just wants to push because they're just like, oh, we need whole grains for fiber. We don't need fiber. I keep bringing up these carnivores, but there's carnivores that lived for dozens of years with no fiber and they're doing fine. I believe there was this thing where we looked at some African population that was really healthy. I don't know how many years ago. And they're like, oh, what is their diet? And they eat tons of fiber. So we're like, oh, everyone needs tons of fiber. And then it just took off from there.
I think you can get fiber from like leafy greens.
Yeah.
So I think that there's this myth that like you need carbs to get
you need
fiber
whole
in
grains.
your diet,
I think it's just
and
bogus.
I don't think that's true at all. I think you can get
okay.
Yeah, I think you can get just from fiber from like whole foods
or not at all. I'm just saying you don't need it. I'm saying go carnivore, but I'm just saying there's tons of people that don't eat fiber and they do fine. They actually say they have smaller bowel movements because they use it all. And like, actually, I just talked to a guy he had a hernia problem and he had surgery and he was by the doctor that he couldn't eat anything but meat and animal products. He could eat no fiber because of constipation. The doctor told him he will get constipation from eating fiber.
I have no idea how to respond to this crazy.
All right, well,
different strokes.
All right,
I know. It's
basically, he's like, yeah, I lost a lot of weight. I, ate mostly, meat and eggs, and I couldn't eat any fiber because it would, cause problems with the whole surgery and all that. And I was like, wow. I mean, that just proves my point. I mean, yes, I eat leafy greens and whatever. All right. And then exercise. Exercise is awesome. Where it gets to be a problem is people think that there's this saying, you can't outrun a bad diet. So people try to lose weight by just exercising when it's like 80% diet. And also I think if you overtrain some of these athletes, they work out so much and they eat high carb diets and they're masking their symptoms. So they look skinny and they think they're healthy, but then they end up getting type 2 diabetes. Like Professor Tim Noakes, who I interviewed, was exactly that. And got type 2 diabetes. Or there's people that are skinny and they have fatty liver disease. You're kind of masking your problems.
Basically, even if you look good.
Yeah. The bigger point is
your health is optimal.
Yes, the bigger point is just because you're skinny and you look good doesn't mean you're healthy. So a lot of people, they're like, oh, dude, I can eat this all I want. And look at me. I'm like, yeah, maybe. Or maybe in 20 years, you're going to have type 2 diabetes or your fatty liver disease. I don't know. You got to get your blood test.
You don't know what's going on.
Yeah, go to your doctor. Yeah. So that's just a point I wanted to make.
No, I agree with that. I think there's this like myth, as long as you like look, like skinny, then you're healthy, and I don't think that that's true at all.
Okay, and then the first time we talked a long time ago, you brought up the China study. You brought up the China study, Pat. Yeah. T. Colin Campbell wrote the book based on a study that was supposed to be only used as observational studies. The original authors of the China study, not the book, was this is not to be used as causation. We're just showing correlations between different things. So a lot of vegans love to bring up, oh, look at all these healthy people in China, like they ate mostly plant-based diets. For one, that's just correlations, it's observational. And for two, no one wants to bring up that there's a province in, okay, here I wrote this down, Tuoli, Tuoli. They ate 45% saturated fat, 134 grams per day, twice as much as Americans, but they had better health than a lot of the provinces. It's just cherry picking, right? You can't say that saturated fat is bad or that these people ate twice as much meat as Americans and were healthier than other provinces that were plant-based.
Is fat the issue from I haven't read it. Is fat the issue from the China study? Or is it meat-based?
It's trying to say that saturated fat is bad and it's trying to say meat is bad. Yeah, it's basically just promoting a plant-based diet. And that's the same thing with blue zones. So that's another thing.
So these other folks that you mentioned, what is the source of the saturated fat?
Is animals.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. They just chose, I think they were just in a different metabolic state, right? They just chose the high-fat route and they ate whole foods and they did fine. And then there are other people, they didn't have as much access to meat and they had lower meat. But maybe they were eating whole foods and they
were eating plant-based. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm saying, so that's fine. So you can't, poke holes in this. It's basically Americans are doing it wrong. Like vegans try to make it seem like everyone who eats a paleo type diet is wrong. I think people just need to say, hey, Americans do it wrong. Like eating.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So I'm just, do you have anything else?
What's the ultimate American meal? A burger with a
fries
bun,
and a drink.
French fries, a milkshake.
Oh, it's a disaster.
It's just basically all the good things that you like about In-N-Out.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, we got to tell you it's not good for you.
All right. Well, anything else you guys have? Because some of this stuff, I was supposed to do this podcast before I started doing all my other podcasts, but now all those other podcasts already came out. So other people kind of probably already talked about this stuff.
No, I think this was a good cover. I think we agree on a lot of the same basic concepts, and I'm still learning more from you in terms of like some things that maybe we didn't know about. So that's good. It was good to kind of share some knowledge. We're gonna cook you.
Motivated to learn more as well.
Good. Yeah, that's all I'm trying to do. And as long as there's like oysters in it, if you're going to cook me something, I need a little bit of animal protein.
We now have sardines in our cupboard because of Brian. So
I make a mean sardine salad. It's so good with fresh spinach and olive oil and balsamic vinegar and sardines. It's good.
We're going to have to cook you a Beyond Meat burger. Or Impossible burger.
I'll try it.
And we got to see what you say. You can tell the listeners what your thoughts are.
I think it just proves that everyone has this natural drive to eat meat. And even in people...
trust us. We miss bacon and we miss...
Yeah, but you can eat it. That's what I'm trying to say is that you can eat it. Like there's nothing to be afraid of. You guys are like making faces at each other.
We don't have to...
It's not the salt.
We don't have to include this in the podcast. But this is the one thing, because I don't think bacon... Trust me, I freaking love bacon. I don't think bacon's healthy.
But what would be wrong with bacon?
Okay.
Tell me.
So, I was doing some research, because that's the one thing. I totally agree you can eat meat. I love use the whole animal, because I think we should go back to that, eating everything, right? Okay. So, bacon has a lot of potassium nitrate and sodium nitrite. So the nitrochemicals are not necessarily carcinogenic because, as you mentioned, spinach, celery, other vegetables naturally have nitrate in them. Mm-hmm. But something happens specifically with the nitrate that interacts with other components in the red meat, and they form N-nitroso compounds, nitrosamine, which damage the lining of the bowel, which can lead to cancer. So that's the reason why the WHO... WHO said, basically published that, like, processed food... Not necessarily processed. So processed meat means, like, it's salted and cured.
Okay.
But there's natural ways to do it that are not carcinogenic. So using just natural salt, and then but it just takes a lot longer. But then basically bacon manufacturers use this artificial, like basically they load it up with these like nitrates, right? Or nitrates, to get you that flavor a lot quicker. And it's also what gives that bacon that like pink look that we love.
All right. So I can't say I don't know what N-nitroso compounds are. I can't pretend I know about this, but what I'll say is the studies they've done are correlations. They're not, you know what I mean? They're observational studies. They're asking people what they ate for the past year or months ago or weeks ago. And there's confounding variables. There's people who eat bacon who they've also shown that smoke more, exercise less. Like all we talked about this in the first podcast and all that stuff. Remember, and it was a 1.18 compared to like 30x with smoking. So we're talking about a 0.18.
Well, smoking, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I'm just saying,
still...
but 0.18 like that, remember it was noise. Like these small variables. So I'll say maybe there's some like crazy combination of what we're doing to cure them and this and that. But I would say that it's probably because of other factors of people who are eating the bacon are eating trash with it. Okay, how many people eat like a true sapien style diet, right? Like a primal ancestral diet, like 2%. Like how many people are vegans in the world? It's like 2%. So we're talking about of the bacon eaters, 2% of them are doing it correctly. Okay, so 98% are doing it incorrectly, and of those people, only a very small 0.18% are getting this colorectal cancer. Right? So if you're eating it correctly, I'm not worried at all. I crush bacon. I just bought a couple pounds of bacon today.
Okay. So basically, I was reading, because of this whole, like, looking at the findings of how nitrates and nitrites that are used in processed red meat, like salami, not like beef, but like salami, bologna, deli meat, and bacon, prosciutto, and like ham from Parma, from Italy, right? It's like very famous. They went back to the traditional method. Like in 1993, because they were so concerned about some of the, like, literally, like, they're like, we also believe that when we artificially inject all this stuff, we do think that we're causing people cancer. So they went back to their old ways. And technically, you can have bacon and not use nitrates. Like, you don't have to do it, right? You could just do it. It's just going to take longer.
I got Butcher Box.
And also, it's going to look not as pink, so it might look a little... It's just more about again, what we were saying, like, they'll do whatever the American consumers want. We're used to having our bacon look a certain way. Like, we want it to be that reddish color. If it didn't have it, it would look a little more like gray. But it's still good. It just
unappetizing.
It would look unappetizing. Yeah. And so that's the reason why they don't go back to, like, they...
So it's about demand, and so I think you're saying that we can change.
Like, demand. You can still have bacon, but have it be in a non-carcinogenic way, or like not have, even if it's a small dose.
I still
have it without that dose of carcinogens.
But
again, this is just, you know. It's
I like that. We could do that, and that's what I'm saying. Like, Butcher Box is helping sponsor the film and the crowdfunding, and they have bacon that's uncured and all that or whatever. And I ate it. It was amazing. It was smoky and delicious, and it did look sort of gray or brown.
But it's
it was amazing.
It's not fake, right? It's going back to the way that, like, humans have historically cured meat from, you know, back in the day before they had, like, tons of chemicals.
Yeah.
So
that's the only argument that you could get, that if we do anything different. But meat by itself, I don't think there's any way to say it's bad.
No.
But maybe you can start talking to me about it if you're like, oh, but we did all this weird stuff. That's what I'm saying. It's like, only when we start doing weird stuff do things get bad.
Yes.
Like vegetable oils, we're not supposed to get oil out of corn. That's so we're using crazy processes.
Yes. It's not, like, vegetable oil is terrible for you.
Okay.
So I'm going to send you this article.
All right. I will
not
pretend
to be a bacon
read it.
Hater.
No, I'll put it in the show notes too, if anyone wants to read it. So, anything else we got here? What about, this quickly, cancer and Alzheimer's prevention. A lot of people don't think that there's a dietary component to that, but there definitely is. There's a genetic component, yes, but there definitely is a metabolic component too. And so I just want to say, I'll probably have Alzheimer's genes, and I probably have maybe cancer genes too. And the best way to minimize that risk is to not express those genes, is to eat these natural foods and not eat highly processed foods, and keep your insulin in control, right? Keep your blood sugar low. And so that's why I don't eat carbs. And I think I kind of damaged myself by eating carbs a lot of my life and eating a bad diet. And I was not healthy for my middle years, I think.
But I think it's never too late to start eating the right way.
Absolutely.
And I do believe in epigenetics, which is like you control, even if, like, your family members have had a history of heart disease, like, that doesn't mean that you have to go down that same path. Like, you are in control of, like, what, you know.
Yeah.
through diet, exercise,
Definitely.
like all sorts, like even things like stress can like affect like how you express those genes.
Oh, there's so much to do with stress, sleep, microbiome. There's so much more. I got to get some more experts to talk about this on upcoming episodes, but there's a lot going on.
There's a lot you can do to be your peak human.
Human plug. So I guess we made some progress here.
Yes, we did. We're about to try to feed Brian a Beyond Meat burger and see what he says.
Maybe. I might have to go home, though. And I have some sausage.
Eat some steak.
Actually,
and eat some bacon.
Just a plug for Costco. I talk a lot about Costco on social media and stuff, but I just found this sausage. It's $2.50 a pound. That's cheaper than ground beef. These big brats, and they have no nitrates, no like curing, no preserve, like nothing. So
You heard it
it's
here
like
first.
kielbasa in these big packs. It's like 4 pounds of kielbasa, and I put them in bags in the freezer, and I'm gonna eat them like every day. It's so good. But I don't know. Maybe I'll see what kind of foods you guys have here. I'm just joking. I like plants.
All right, we've found a common ground.
All right. I'm going to stop recording now. All right, you beautiful people. Thanks for making it this far. If you're still here, maybe head on over to iTunes or in the Apple Podcast app and rate and review this show. It will help give it more visibility and credibility so others can find it. We're also on Indiegogo, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, under your bed, everywhere. Say hi. Okay, goodbye.